Born to Build podcast.
Welcome to Born to Build, conversations with the builders, founders, and pioneers driving change from the ground up, giving you the tools to build and grow your business. Now, this second conversation in a 3-part series where I'm chatting with the 3 co-founders of Libryo. And if you haven't listened to part 1 yet, I'd probably recommend you do that first. That will give you some more context of today's chat as well. But yeah, so this series is, we're going to go quite deep, and it's quite, I think, close to my heart. Libryo is a company that I've worked for since the early days. So yeah, as you probably heard in the first episode, if you now had a chance to listen to it, I was part of the early days as well. But yeah, so these 3 men that I get to chat with now, not only are they my bosses, they've also become great friends. So today I get to chat with Garth Watson. And Garth is one of the 3 co-founders of Libryo, where he leads legal content innovation. Before starting Libryo, he was a partner at GSR Law in South Africa, leading the corporate department and gaining deep experience in business strategy management, legal compliance, and corporate governance. With a background in environmental science and law, Garth is passionate about helping organizations manage ESG risks and opportunities. Garth, welcome.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Now, as hopefully everyone watching or listening in has heard, some of the Libryo story in part 1 with Pete, I want to now really kind of peel back some layers on a specific aspect, and that's really about culture. And that, to me, is something that just stands out as part of the Libryo story. It came up a lot in my conversation with Pete as well. Culture is such a key thing. When you think back to the earliest days of Libryo, how intentional were you about culture versus how much of it just happened, as a byproduct of kind of the people who just, showed up?
We, in retrospect, were very deliberate about building culture. Certainly, that's how we think about it now. We were, if we retell the story of Libryo, we'll say we were super deliberate about it. I don't think we called it culture back then, though. I think it was more a case of saying, what kind of a company do we want to build? And then putting the foundations in place to build a company like that. If you think about a house, you can't build on a part of the ground that doesn't have good foundations. So we wanted to make sure that we had the right foundations in place and that we could then build a really good building on those foundations. And to that end, we put in place what we called foundational principles, which I'm sure we'll get into and dig into some of them in the rest of this episode. The foundational principles were very deliberately done. We actually got a consultant on board to help us, Brett Johnson, who you might know. Certainly, Pete is a good friend of Brett's and vice versa. And Brett runs a consultancy called REAP, which is short for Repurposing Business. And so he has many years of management consulting experience. But what he's very good at is helping businesses articulate their foundational principles. And so we'll go into a little bit more about them, I'm sure, but that was the step 1 of, I think, telling the culture story of Libryo.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So tell us a little bit more. Let's lift the hood on that. Like, what did that look like, that time with Brett Johnson? By the way, he's also got a great podcast. Go find that as well. But what did that look like? That time, that initial time with him, kind of thinking through these foundational principles. I think, we can go through some of them as well. Actually, let me quickly just read through actually what the end result was, and you can tell us how that actually happened. So these 12 principles that Libryo, that you guys came up with: have fun, make money, do something good, Then the next one is make an impact. Number 3 is they must be a dude. You can explain more about that just now. I'm making a margin call. Sustain, enable. We are a household. Authenticity and transparency. PYFT. Again, you can explain that a little bit later. We are adults. Generosity, God, and we lead by example. So yeah, maybe go take us back to those early days with Brett Johnson kind of brainstorming. What did that look like?
Sure. So context, we were founded as a remote first company.
Mm-hmm.
We had me in Oxford and Pete and Malk in Cape Town.
Yeah.
Malk at the time was coming out of corporate life. He was an asset manager at Investec Asset Management, as it then was, now 91. Pete had been running the environmental law consultancy, rebranded to Standards and Legal. And I was trying to hustle hard in the UK to not become a solicitor and see if the technology that we had built in Standards and Legal had any legs in the UK. And we were on the cusp of, we hoped, raising our first capital from external investors. And we were well aware that when you have other stakeholders involved apart from yourselves, there are other influences, especially if they are, if it's got anything to do with large sums of capital. So the initial capital that we raised wasn't earth-shattering. I think it was about 100,000 euros or something like that. So we're not talking kind of massive money, but what it did is it brought in extra scrutiny, extra accountability, and we were aware of that, the potential for that. And so when we put the principles down, we said to ourselves, we don't want this to be corporate BS. We don't want this to be aspirational. We want this just to be descriptive. So the values that we have now, in other words, the things that we hold in high regard now, we want to continue to hold those things in high regard. And the things that, basically that's the long and the short of it. So these things describe us in doing what we do and being who we are. And so we wanted to say, let it not be said that we need to return to our roots at any point in time. And so Brett helped us. Often I spend quite a lot of time flying back to Cape Town. And on one of the trips, we sat down with Brett, and we had before that had a number of other conversations with him online, and he helped us to understand what a foundational principle is and what it isn't. And not that I'll be able to don't ask a follow-up. I won't probably be able to explain that now. But and I'm not sure that our foundational principles are like excellent principles in the sense that they pass the test of a principle or anything like that. But what happened was, after a lot of discussion, I sat down one day and I gave it my best bash, and they kind of just flowed. And I put it down in a PowerPoint and I sent it to Pete and Malk, and they both collaborated it and tweaked one or two things here and there. But afterwards, we're like, I think you got it. Like, I think those are, so we kind of agreed on it, and that was it. Yeah.
Sure. Oh, very cool. Well, let's dive into some of those principles, because obviously not all of them are obvious what they actually mean. But first one I think is quite straightforward. But have fun, make money, do something good. And this has been very much obviously a guiding thread throughout the Libryo story. But how did that principle shape the way you approach decisions and trade-offs as a founder and as a founding team as well, co-founder team?
Yeah, so that principle was at the time, and I think might still be, Pete's business manifesto. So that was uniquely Pete at that time, and we had to put that one in. Not we had to, but we wanted to, obviously, as well. I think it
Yeah.
sums up all of the other principles. But the reality is, when you're running a business, there are some very hard things that one has to deal with and overcome. So you're not
Mm,
always having lots of fun. I think back to 2021, where half the world was raising hundreds of millions of venture capital and like multi-billion dollar valuations. And we were trying to raise a Series A and we failed to do that. And our all-in business plan had kind of depended on us hitting certain milestones and raising on the back of hitting those milestones. And we just couldn't convince anyone to part with capital. And the result of that was we had to retrench or make redundant, restructure, however you want to, whatever euphemisms you want to use. We had to let go about half of the team, around 30 people. And that was not fun. Um,
mm,
the other one is, have fun, make money. Like as, people running a startup and as people who had joined the team, we certainly weren't getting rich or making a lot of money through our salaries. Um, but we did have an exit to ERM, which provided a bit of liquidity to all the team, and we had given everybody share options, which was, I think, quite a unique thing, and
mm,
that was great. So there was a little bit of making money at that point, which was great, and do something good, which has always been the intention, which is like as a company, you don't exist to make money, you exist to provide a social good or provide value, and in exchange for that value, you get paid. So they all kind of hung together. It was like a more of a spirit of a thing, like this is something that you can't really necessarily like make a decision based on this principle. Although if you're not having fun for far too long, you got to question like what are we doing? If your whole business is going through hell, it's like maybe you should like find another business. So that was the kind of idea
yeah.
behind that one. We have had a lot of fun, to be honest, because
Yeah.
not everything fun is related to the other two things, making an impact or making money. I think overall we've tried to kind of keep that as a bit of an all-star, and just a sense check against which we do things.
Now the idea of a margin call is it's quite unique, but also I think the one that I get here quoted the most. I think over the years, probably. How has that
Yeah,
principle influenced not just the way Libryo operated, but also the way you personally lead your life?
yeah, it's good. So margin call. So margin call doesn't mean getting margin called when you investing and trading, having taken out a margin loan.
Yeah.
In that context, margin call means saying like your positions decline sufficiently for us to need more money from you. Otherwise, you're going to get liquidated. That's not what we meant by margin call. We mean um, this. So margin is about succeeding at life, family, and community, as well as at business. And obviously, friendship and community exists inside and out of business, but it means having enough capacity in your life to have good ideas, be empathetic, creative, kind, be able to easily make flights and trains, of which Pete and I at the time were both guilty of, like missing flights just because we were trying to fit too much in the day. I
Yeah.
in Oxford had far too many experiences of rocking up on the platform, having had a mad dash on my Brompton, which is a folding bike that you can ride and then fold up and put on the train. And just seeing the train go down the platform, and just because you're just hustling too hard. So a margin call in that context is a deliberate call that we would make of ourselves or of each other to say you need to change tack, whether on a short-term basis or maybe long-term, to create more capacity and more margin in your life. And it actually turns out easier to make a margin call of others than it is of yourself.
Yeah.
And so, what we found as being a remote first business, we were a remote business before it was cool, way before COVID. We're talking 2016. And
Yeah.
people would always say, how do you make sure people aren't slacking off? And we'd respond by saying something along the lines of, "Are you kidding me? Have you seen our people? Peop Our people will probably work too hard, too long, too hard, and expect too much of themselves, and are really trying to go the extra mile." And so the probability of burnout was quite not burnout, but just yeah, burnout was too high. And so we would often say X, Y, or Z. I'm going to try not to mention names. You need to take a holiday.
Yeah.
Um, you need to take a break. And so, or you need to do X, Y, or Z slightly differently, we think. But it's hard when you're trying to de-risk the company that comes from just everything being a risk to actually being something that's viable.
Yeah.
And how I've done it, I've led a team that has been responsible for content production. Okay, so just a little bit of insight into Libryo.
Yeah.
How do you sell a regulatory compliance solution to global customers who operate in many jurisdictions around the world when you only have content for one jurisdiction? And that was where we were in 2016. We had South
Yeah.
Africa. Okay, so it wasn't just one jurisdiction. We had the provinces, and we had a number of municipalities too. But how do you do that when they need California and Utah and I don't know, a few provinces in India, one or two in China, Turkey, whatever. And
Mm.
so that team responsible for content production, like we now have 80 countries and 1,300 odd subnational jurisdictions, including all 50 states. So we're not where we were, but that was the team that was often the reason why we couldn't just say yes to big deals that we needed to close. And so obviously they have a tendency to work super hard. How do you make that trade off? But the reality is, if you are sharp, you can work better. If you're fresh, you can work better. If you're overtired and dull, you don't work as well. And so I've always tried. So this is a long way around to answer your question.
No, all good.
I would try to take a break even when it felt irresponsible,
Mm.
um, and just shoulder that discomfort for a while until I would come back and to work and be amazed at how much better I was at my job, and also sometimes experience what I perceive to be a inefficient way of working because of tiredness. And I would try to say that. I'll be like, guys, I think you guys need a break. It feels to me like you're in the final stretches of a marathon and you're running slowly. I would prefer
Mm.
you to feel fresh like you felt at the start of the marathon. You can do that if you take 8 days off, which is scientifically proven to be a good period of time to not spend a hell of a lot of time away, but also get that recharge. Stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So, I mean, margins, right? Like it's about having that extra space. There's
Mhm.
that space for other stuff to come up as well, right? Like because
Correct.
you don't know what's going to come up. So you got to leave that margin, you got to leave that space available as well. And yeah, I think also the unlimited leave policy actually backfired a little bit as well. That was, part of the
Yeah.
library policy. We had unlimited leave and you're allowed to take as much leave as you need and want, kind of together with the we are adults,
Yes,
foundational
they go together.
principle, that kind of goes hand
Yeah.
in hand. But it actually backfired because people weren't taking enough leave. They weren't even taking the amount of leave that they could take according to whatever's, country they were
Right.
in. But yeah, so totally get what you're saying.
Totally. And that does go with we are adults. But sometimes what I've noticed, and it's obvious, being an adult isn't necessarily equated with wisdom or anything like that. Just because you're an adult and you are required to make to be responsible and make responsible choices doesn't mean that you're going to do that. And so, yeah, the principle of we are adults was a pushback on Malk's experience in corporate life. Um, and we basically wanted to say, this is not corporate daycare where
Yeah,
we're not here to like, entertain you or to make sure that um, everything is provided for you. There's an element of get up that you're going to need and an element of initiative that you're going to have to take. And we actually expect that. So we're not going to micromanage you. We're not going to, we're just going to say things like, these are your objectives, and then leave it to you to get done. And most people, that if early stage companies are for you, you need to be that kind of person. So most of the
Mm.
people that were part of the team were actually good at doing that. But then, yes, you're right. That does sometimes mean that you don't always get the trade-off about like the recovery strain balance quite right.
Yeah, yeah. And what I loved about margin call as well is that it almost became like a secret code as well. You could just
Yeah,
say, "Hey guys, I need to take a margin call," and everyone totally meant what that, knew what that
everyone got
meant.
it. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Okay, they must be a dude. Now that has always been, quite an interesting, fun one. And there's a little asterisk. Dude is a completely gender neutral term in this case. What does it mean in practice? And how have you seen it shaping, especially hiring, obviously, and team dynamics?
So what happened? What happened when we met Malk? Pete and I met Malk for the first time. Well, firstly, we met Malk in Newlands Forest, and instead of, as the legend goes, pontificating in a coffee shop, we Mark said, let's go mountain biking or surfing or something, or go for a walk in the forest. And so that's what we ended up doing. But after
Yeah,
we initially met Mark, we had a number of, I was back in Oxford and we would meet online. And after one meeting, it, we got onto, potentially Mark getting involved. This was before Libryo was founded and coming on as a founder of Libryo and blah, blah, blah. And Pete, we got off a call, and then Pete and I got on another call, and Pete said, "Well, what do you think about Malk?" And I said, "Well, I mean, the guy's a dude," and and what I meant by that is, here's someone that you enjoy working with. Here's
mm,
someone who leaves you feeling a better you than you felt before. Here's someone who like multiplies and doesn't divide. Like, he adds to you, doesn't subtract. He inspires you, he encourages you. Mark is a dude. And
yeah,
that's exactly what the principle says. So they must be a dude. It's not about um, a gender, especially in this day and age. My goodness, like we put that in 2016. So there's like the asterisk would probably be bigger now, but it says as a gender neutral term. What it means is a dude in this context means what I just said about Mel. And so why is the principle they must be a dude? Well, I just come from practicing law, and Peter just come from working as a technology consultant. And far too often you have clients which just think they can be the lord of you, and in a way that is makes you feel the opposite of what I just said
mm,
about a dude. And so Peter and I have been saying, it's like, if we're going to start a company where we really want to work with dudes, and fortunately we don't have clients, we've kind of got customers. Well, now we do kind of have clients because we're an ERM and everyone's a client. But there's like a sense in which you want to fire your clients even if they're not a dude. Just that was just like that was what was going through my mind at the time. Like, let's just like, if you're going to like go to the effort and make the sacrifices you need to make to build your own company, come on, man, there must there must be a dude. And so we try to kind
life's
of
life's
just
too short not to work with dudes.
correct, exactly. And so what we try to do was kind of filter for dudes, especially in the early stages, um, and like attracts like. So hopefully you'll be able to say, I'm a dude, Sam's a dude, Pete's a dude, Mark's a dude, and I'll mention all the others. I don't want to mention names in this podcast. So but like all the dudes at Libryo, um, you know who you are. It's everyone. And by the way, the content team, up until very, very, very recently, with the exception of a man, of one man, was entirely ladies. So they're all dudes. So that's what the there must be a dude principle means.
Love it. And it's fun too, right? And it's part of the have fun, I guess, as well. It's just these principles
Exactly. Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
fun as well. And I think, as part of hiring, Pete mentioned it as well, is each of you go through these principles as well with everyone that you hire. And it's got to resonate with everyone. And I guess that's part of the do test is also if these principles do resonate with people, right? Um,
Exactly. People
yeah.
always, sorry, just on that point, people are
Yeah.
always refreshed when we read the principles because they're
Mm,
expecting the type of corporate platitude or whatever that you get served on the walls of boardrooms. And they're always there, but they're always forgotten. And
yeah.
they just don't mean anything and they don't change anything. And so when we would read it just to say, to people that were about to join, they'd passed the interviews. They were basically offer letter was on the way. It's like, this is who we are. Do you like it? Do you have any objections? We just want you to know this is like, if you join Library, this is the culture. Because we started to realize this is now a culture. So I've given some thought as to what a corporate culture actually is. And the corporate culture is how we behave here.
Mhm.
So it's like if somebody comes with a different culture, they'll come with behaviors and attitudes and ways of thinking that just are against how things are around here. And so what we've realized with Library is that there is now a culture. So you know how people will go to a different country and they will start speaking with an accent. It's because that's something that prevails, that way of upspeak in America or saying things like H and not H. um, I'm stood under this tree. No, you are standing under the tree. It is like even the English, sorry, just a massive aside, even the English don't speak English properly, it turns out. So you'll catch a different way of being, and
Mm.
that happens because it's a different culture, but you'll speak differently and you'll act differently sometimes. And that starts happening in Library as well. So there's definitely a vibe, and I think that's culture. It's a
Mm.
vibe that influences behavior in a positive way, in the way that initially was descriptive for us. Because we when we put those principles down, we were saying like, let's not make these prescriptive, let's make these descriptive.
Yeah, and I guess like, and that's where the kind of this term of culture fit, you know, uh, is applies as well. Is when unfortunately we've had people that where the behavior didn't fit the
Mm,
culture, and then we've had to kind of say goodbye. And I think that's clearly in line with what you're saying there. It's truly about how you're behaving in certain situations, and like does
yeah.
that align with how everyone else in the household behaves? And that's the next one, household. That I want to just double click on. The
Hmm.
principle of being a household. It's obviously powerful, but also complex. I think we talked about it with Pete as well. It's not quite, family, and that's why
No.
household is a much better term. But
Yeah.
what does it mean for you, and especially obviously being scattered all across the globe, remote first company before it was cool, like you said. Um, yeah, what does it mean to be a household?
A household. So it's actually good. I want to segue from what you were saying before about saying goodbye to people.
Mm,
The thing is, in business, imagine the Springboks fielded their C team, because obviously the Springbok squad is so massive that they can field their B team and still win. It's a deep squad. But imagine a team, okay, Springboks bad example, another team consistently didn't field their best players. What would happen? Well, they would lose. And so it's all very nice to say we're a family, but we're not a family, because you can't fire your family members. Okay.
mm,
So you, maybe, but the reality is we're a team. and a team has to put the best players on the field, or the best players that they can get on the field. Now, I think a household is kind of like a combination. So the people that were let go, they weren't necessarily let go. Well, they weren't let go because they didn't behave culturally. That's not a reason
And,
to
and by the way, just to
fire.
clarify, we're not talking about the retrenchments that we, this is the other people that where they were, it wasn't a good fit. Yeah.
But people often have their own reasons. So and so yeah, like probably the less said about that kind of thing, the better, because the room for misunderstanding is probably too high, and it's always very complicated and never ever pleasant. Or it's like it sucks. The hardest
Yeah.
thing about business, I think, is making people redundant or firing people. Second hardest is hiring. I think is getting the right people on the team. Um,
Yeah.
so household is a recognition that if Libryo succeeds, everyone succeeds. If Libryo fails, everyone kind of fails. You've kind of joined your career destiny for a period of time, or maybe even forever, to this company. Like people talk about the PayPal mafia. Well, who was that? Like Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, David Sachs, Reid Hoffman, all of these guys. And like, look what they're doing now. The reason they put it under the term PayPal mafia is because that they're actually like the PayPal household. They exist in a kind of metaphysical sense. So household, I think, is there's a head of the household, or a head team. I think that was always Pete Malk and myself, and we were always very aware of those what I've kind of said, and it's like let the prayer for the household was that we would be a household of peace and prosperity, that there would be welfare within our household, um, that there would be prosperity, that it wouldn't just be necessarily about the fact that we could pay a paycheck at the end of the month, but also that it would be something more like you're at Libryo because there's something more that you both contribute to as a household member, and that you gain as a result of being a part of the household.
Mm.
It's very closely related to the culture. So how being the household is part of the culture, but it's actually almost a more over encompassing concept. The culture is actually within the household. So the way
Mm.
I think about it is you're on a journey together. We're all in the same bus or the same vehicle. Now, we being part of the Libryo bus or the Libryo household means we're all going at the same speed. You might want to go faster, but you're in the bus. You might want to go slow, but you're in the bus. You might want to go a different direction, but you're in the bus. You might want the aircon turned up a few degrees higher, but you're in the same bus. And so what our role was to make sure that we go on the right road, that we get to our destination, that we don't crash, that we have the climate just right for you, climate culture, the way you feel, so much so that if you saw another bus going along, maybe faster, or you thought on a better direction, you would say, no, I want to go back into the Libryo bus because I'm comfortable, I'm peaceful, the music is nice. It's just better being in the Libryo bus, no matter like all things being equal, well, not all things being equal, but no matter the fact that I might think that that bus was maybe I could get paid extra there, or I could advance my career better there, or could get promotions more easily there. So, yeah.
Amazing. And it wasn't even a cycling analogy, which Garth is famous for, or cycling or some
Just
other
wait, I'll
sport.
come up with one. There we go. But it was an analogy.
Now, one of Libryo's more unusual, and they're actually probably all quite unusual, but one of the more unusual ones is, and sometimes a bit controversial, is the principle of God. How is that principle, and it's obviously not just a principle, it's a person, uh, how's that influenced the way we built Libryo's culture, and how did that play out in the everyday reality of building a company?
in many, many different ways. So there's a strong argument to be made, actually many, many very strong arguments, that if it wasn't for our acknowledgement of God, that Libryo would not exist today. Um, Libryo has been a series of miracles.
Yeah.
Like, it's actually an unlikely story. Like, show me another company in the EHS space that has gone from zero content to the content coverage we have, and from the software stack that we had in 2016 to the software stack that we have now, and the integrations with global uh, environmental management system providers and everything that Library's got going with it, like the Library Collaborate platform. It's like we didn't do something hard. Actually, we did something impossible. It's just not very sexy. It's environment, health and safety regulation, where we're dealing with like municipal law and like broken PDFs and stuff like that. So there's that. Then there's the whole thing of like, how do you sell to enterprises when you don't have the thing that they want, and you're building the airplane while it's starting to take off. I mean, during COVID, we started a weekly prayer meeting, which anyone in the company, we kept inviting everyone at company stand up, which is another, maybe touch on this just now, the two key aspects of how we would be deliberate about building our company culture, which was company stand up on a Wednesday and then big week. But we'll come back to that later maybe. And we would have this prayer meeting, and now you've gone from having a really dynamic prayer meeting where God is clearly present. You can discern his presence. You can feel him. You are in awe of who he is. You can hear what he's saying, and you're having a conversation, and then someone just goes and, like, to be honest, interrupts and starts their own thing. And you're like, oh, come on. You just get a sense of God isn't even interested in this anymore, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the library prayer meetings were and still are my favorite prayer meetings. And actually, to be honest, like the only one that I go to at the moment, and way better than any. Anyway, let me not wax too lyrical. And the reason is because we depended on the answers to those prayers for our household, for our own kind of personal welfare, that of our household. We all cared deeply about what we were praying about. It was related to the mission that we were on, right? So this isn't like some hobby ministry, like flipping, praying before we, I don't know, do whatever we like, volunteering for God in our spare time. Like, this is it. Like, our work we do for God, our worship is our worship, like, and vice versa. So it's like one and the same thing. And so, from time to time, we would like share freely about that. And this is linked to authenticity and transparency. And it's linked to, we are adults, and it's linked to all of the principles. And it's just to say, like, guys, I'm going to be super, super inauthentic if I'm going to somehow pretend that God isn't the most important person to me, and that Jesus isn't Lord, and that he didn't do an amazing thing when he died on the cross and God raised him from the dead and he ascended into heaven, and now he is actually sovereign and Lord. And like, if that doesn't gel with you, then that's okay. There's no compulsion here. We're not religious and dogmatic, but we're also real. So you can be real and we can be real. How does that sound? We can both just be ourselves. Happy days. And so I think because so there's like two kinds of people in life, and mostly what you hear on the airwaves, on, I don't know, like online and stuff, is you hear like it's not okay to talk about God and Jesus and, spiritual things. And then mostly people actually are okay. So like, sometimes people will say, like, I think maybe like that crossed the line. And so that's fine though. Like, if something crosses a line, then you have a conversation. And that it won't just be the principle of God or the fact that we love him that caused a line crossing. Like, that's what life's all about. Like, you got to like, it's here's your cycling analogy. If you're riding downhill on a mountain bike and you want to go faster and faster and you want to win, or you want to like, have more fun, you got to find the limits, because the limit is there to be found and also there to be crossed. And so, but if you're an adult and if you have genuine love and respect, you can have a conversation and you can like, you can figure that out. It's like, is it okay for me to say what I think without you getting like offended? Now, I'm not going to be hateful. Hopefully, hopefully that's okay. So, um, and look, it's an ongoing thing because somehow it is controversial. Somehow a belief in God is sometimes offensive. And so there might be people that are listening to this that are offended, or that have some kind of objection to it. And that's okay. I might also have an objection to some of the stuff you believe and say online. Did that like occur to you? But how are we going to journey together unless we can like have an honest, open, heartfelt conversation, which is under our principles, our authenticity, transparency, and authenticity
Mm.
principle, which is we're looking to build bridges, not walls, through open, honest, and heartfelt communication. So,
Yeah.
so that's like that. It just puts the onus on everyone to be responsible for themselves. We're all adults here. You've got to, if there's a problem, let's talk. I get the fact that I'm a founder, I'm someone in responsibility, like position of authority and responsibility, and that does have a dynamic. But like, and so yes, I 100% get that. But also, if you know me, and this is why we try hard to get together all the time in Big Week, at least once a year, is to build these bridges to go, I'm actually not here to laud my position of being a founder over you. I'm here to serve you, literally. Like, how can I help you do your job better? And that's what people don't realize about founding a startup is you're not the top dog, you're the bottom dog. You're literally building a company so that you can support everyone up and create a place that is a place where they can build their careers, and also we can do our thing. So like bit of a long story there.
Mm.
But
Yeah, but it's
yeah,
powerful. I think like I guess the controversial bit is where people might feel like something's being forced on them. But I think that was never the heart. Like you said, it would be, it would be inauthentic if we didn't express, what is, like you said, most important in our lives. So that and so that needs to be reflected in the foundational, principles of starting this company that you're trying to build beyond just actually that company, but you're building God's kingdom, really. Um, so yeah, I think that is authentic, and it was never something that was forced on anyone. So yeah, I think I really appreciate that. And just back to the prayer meetings that you mentioned as well, I think those are still very much, I love them as well. And I love also how you documented everything as well. There's a prayer doc that has been going on for years now, and just whatever God's saying and things like that, and scripture verses get put in there. And it's such a powerful thing also to remember what God said, and what the prayer meetings we've had together. And again, that's not forced on anyone. It's just an open invite for anyone to join. But yeah, very, very powerful. By the way, if you're interested, Garth is very good at documenting these things, and he's actually created an app called Doxa to do
uh-huh.
just that, to kind of document what God has been saying. Go check that out.
That might be the
Yeah.
first online mention of docs. It's not quite ready yet, but hopefully it will be. It's a project that I've been working on in my spare time for a little while now. So yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for that.
Cool. You mentioned Big Week. You mentioned the weekly stand up, and no one actually stands up, by the way, but it's just called stand up for some reason. Um, but you mentioned those two as very, very important to us. Tell us more.
Yeah, so it started out small, where when we were, I think, 5 people, something like that, in the very early days, and we were at that time, like, kinda it was me in Oxford and the Cape Town office, and so we would have a oh, and then Sam, you were in Nairobi as well,
Mm.
I think, and,
Yep.
before you went to Germany, and we would have a once a week meeting where the agenda was to share your highlights. And um, it was really great because it was a time to connect with people over things that um, weren't necessarily related to what we were working on or achieving. And it's evolved over time and it's very big now. So it takes up the whole hour. And we usually have about 30 people. Sometimes more people come and we run over, we run over. But that is was a place for us to just connect as people, and have the opportunity to hear the voice of people that worked in teams outside of the teams that we worked in, and also just to get to know people and get to know personalities. And people would often share a work highlight and a personal highlight, and it's still like that. And it's just really awesome. Definitely favorite meeting of the week, and you just realize what a great household it is, and how awesome it is being on the library bus. And yeah, I know, Sam. What are your thoughts about company stand up?
Yeah, it's a fun one. It's I guess
Yeah, it is fun.
you just get a time because we all remote first. We just don't have that time. Obviously, a lot more people can relate to that nowadays. After post COVID, obviously, a lot more people work from home and things like that. Um, but before then, like it was unheard of, and so yeah, it was just good time to connect with also other people that you don't get to work with on a day to day basis. So you actually get to see others as well, hear what they're up
Yeah.
to. Yeah, and just random stories about cats and I don't know, fires and I
Rooibos.
don't, yeah, all kinds of weird stuff. Again, part of the fun culture is people bring up the
Camping.
most
That was a
random
good
things.
one. Tell
Which one?
your camping Mish one. Sorry, I mentioned name, but she won't mind. About the question was, tell us your highlight
Camping.
and also tell us your camping story, whatever
Right.
it might be. And everyone had it was really interesting. There were campers and non-campers, and everyone who campers were very forward and kind of promoted it strongly. And yeah, it was great. That was a very, very
We
cool
would
one.
have known that there will be camps about camping.
Uh-huh.
Big week. Tell us about Big Week.
Oh, big week. Big week is the most incredible week. It's a week where we try. Well, I mean, we said once a year we'll get everyone into the same country, same city, the same rooms for 1 week to firstly catch up on all the you know kitchen conversation, water cooler conversation that we've missed out on, because you don't have that kind of serendipity online. The meeting ends and then you're like, oh,
Mm.
meeting's over. Let me go downstairs to my kitchen and make a coffee by myself, kind of thing. And you don't just, there's no banter or post meeting obvious conversation where you actually find the solution that you were chatting about in the meeting and stuff like that. So big week's always been about um, getting everyone together. It's been about meeting people that you hired online, and you've been working with them for 6 months or so, and now you get to meet them in person. Um, it's also an opportunity to just have a lot of fun. Like we'll often go to Cape Town, which is it's the best city in the
Yeah.
world. Like I've traveled quite extensively, and whenever I used to go home to Cape Town, I always thought, man, this place is incredible. And home is now southwest of London in the countryside, kind of quasi countryside, and it's awesome. But going back to Cape Town, you're like, oh man, this place is epic. So
Yeah.
we go to Cape Town usually, and you know, just do cool stuff together. Stay at a nice hotel, and we have big day. Big day was a big day and big night on the Friday, and usually what we do is we on on um, on the Fridays we'll do Zeb talks, which are kind of like TED talks, but they're about this little guy, the zebracorn. So this is
Hmm.
Africa's first unicorn. We had big aspirations, which we're not
So
quite a $1 billion
if you
valuation.
if
Maybe
you only
maybe
if
ERM
you
will be blessed by Library's presence within its corporate structure. Um,
if you're only
but we had
listening
Zeb
in, he was just holding up a zebra with a horn, essentially.
Zebracorn. Um, and which I'm sure Malk can tell that story, because we used to take these to all the investors, and all the investors love this little guy. Um, and we would say, take a foundational principle, can be anyone, and talk about it for 5 minutes and tell us a story about how you experienced that. What we would start getting was, I felt, foundational principle jurisprudence, which is giving content to the principles. So, and there have been some super memorable ones by various people, and maybe one day we'll post one or two of them online. But the ones that kept coming up were, there must be a dude, the one about we are adults. People would often talk about the God one, um, authenticity and transparency. Um, Sometimes people using the authenticity and transparency one to say, like, I don't think we should be like, as we should maybe turn down some of them, maybe even the God one a little, ever so slightly, which is great. We'll celebrate. Everyone will like applaud, but you walk away going like, is this like a church camp, or is this a conference, like a motivational conference, or is this like where are we? What is this? And but it would be so unique and so flippin' awesome that I think everyone would just just love that. And now and they would just have like an awesome kind of party, dinner, and drinks and good time in the evenings. So that was big. That was the Friday, and then obviously the rest of the week was like, this is where we're going. So, it was like a whole 7 continents in 7 years, um, and other goals, crazy goals that we had. And we're not having it this year, flip, but we can't wait to have our next one.
Yeah. No, and it's always super, super special time. I guess also because everyone's so starved for this like in-person time.
Yeah,
So
totally.
like it just like elevates everything. Suddenly everything's just like so cool. Yeah. Well,
Big
we got to
time.
bring this in for a landing, but maybe just to end us off, looking back, which principle actually has surprised you by proving to be maybe more important than you thought when you first wrote them down?
I think probably the God one. Like, in retrospect, I don't think I actually realized how important that one would have proved to be.
Mm,
So the others ones you can kind of understand, like the benefits of, like, there must be a dude, and we've all
yeah.
had authentic and transparent conversations and kind of have experienced a bit of it. But at that stage in my life, I hadn't yet experienced some of the um I hadn't experienced God at work in the same in the way that I have experienced him now. And what I mean by that is, um, like, you're facing something that's impossible, and not only actually is impossible, but feels impossible, and you feel depressed and despondent, and like, how am I ever gonna pick this 30,000 ton like weight up? I'm just a man, and sitting down and saying, okay, God, I'm gonna pray, and I'm trusting you to speak, and recording it on a voice recorder, and then writing it down, transcribing it, and then using that, not using it, but yes, like reminding myself of it, and experiencing God speaking afresh, fresh encouragement, step by step, and then seeing the obstacle literally crack in front of you.
Yeah.
Like, not only that, but like prayer meeting after prayer meeting after prayer meeting with people like yourself and Pete, Emily, and now I'm like, stop naming names. Sorry, I didn't mean to mention you, but others as well, and actually you look back and you go, flip, like that wasn't something that we did. I'm not that good at business. I'm not, I'm, I'm not, like, I, I don't know. This is just not something that I can take too much credit for.
Mhm.
And so, and then seeing the result of where we are today, um, and knowing that it wasn't just a story of something God did, but it was a special kind of story, which I think will happen a lot more, which is God promises something, we believe, over an inconveniently long period of time, continue on a journey with Him and with each other, and with Him. And after a while, something happens where you're like, okay, that was us together, but it wasn't us alone. And it was
Right.
something that God did. And so that's what's, I think, if I have to think something that was like surprising, it's not like I was like, oh, I'm surprised. I'm so surprised. But it was like, wow, I did not necessarily expect that in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Beautiful. Loved how you expressed that, and what a journey this is, and it's such a privilege to be walking it with you as well. Yeah, amazing to just dive
Likewise.
into the culture of Libryo. Obviously, like you said in the beginning as well, the principles, they're not like some special ones. It's like just a set of principles that really work well for us, and they're not necessarily going to work well for you or for
Totally.
your company. But I guess hopefully you can take away, listening in, you can take away some of this, so lots of nuggets. But just to end us off with some very quick rapid fire, I'll just go with just two quickly. Either or, be the funniest in the room or the smartest.
Uh, funniest. You have to be super smart to be funny. That's
Ah, that's cheating. Uh, Fight 100 duck-sized horses or one horse-sized duck.
one horse-sized duck.
Words of wisdom. Thanks, Garth. It was so good
Awesome. Thank you,
chatting with
Sam.
you. And
Likewise. Thanks.
cheers, man.
Cheers.
Born to build, to bless.